Hey everyone, Ryan Young, Kama Jiu-Jitsu. One of our YouTube subscribers, by the way, thank you for subscribing to our channel. Thank you for sharing our videos with everyone you know who's interested in Jiu-Jitsu. And thank you for liking things, because liking things that we put out lets YouTube know that we're doing stuff that you like, and will hopefully get us more exposure that way so we can get the word out. But what I wanted to cover today was as a result of a YouTube subscriber asking me to go over the reasons why we should go gi or why we should go no gi. So gi is just simply your uniform, your top. So at Kama Jiu-Jitsu we do both. We do both gi and no gi. And we break it up usually by the seasons. So the summer season for us, which runs from June 1st through August 31st, we're running no gi, which means we're usually wearing a t-shirt or a rash guard, and we just wear gi pants only because it's cleaner, you know, because all the hair and stuff kind of goes off on your mats. What we can also do is if we don't wear gi pants, we'll wear spats with shorts over them. Never shorts with no spats. Also never spats with no shorts either. That's why we do that. Well, it comes back down to always been that way. We always train both gi and no gi. When I was in Hawaii, every Friday was no gi. That was basically our street fight class. But the Monday and Wednesday, and in the privates, we do with the gi on. At Hickson School and at Gracie Torrance, we do the way we do it now here at Kama Jiu-Jitsu. Summers, no gi, the rest of the 9 months with. Really what you're looking at is, as we know it, there are more things to do with the gi on than without the gi on. That being the case, it makes more sense to train more time with the gi than without the gi. Now originally, the gi was put on because back in Japan, I guess the thought was that everybody dressed wearing suits, not t-shirts and stuff like we do today. But they were more formal in their dress. Same thing with the U.S. If you look at pictures back during the Depression and the turn of the century times, you'd see the men wearing suits for a lot of times. So it would make sense to wear something like this because it would more resemble a suit. But for today, people think, well, we don't dress like that anymore, so there's really no need to wear this. Well, in actuality, there are reasons. So, you know, if we go gi versus no gi. Now, what are the benefits to wearing the gi? With regard to your training, the benefits is that you get to learn a whole bunch of new techniques that involve grabbing this, you know, grabbing here versus grabbing here or having nothing to grab, you know, grabbing here in the collar versus having nothing to grab or grabbing the neck. Chokes. There are a lot of chokes that can be done with the gi. So, you know, you have a lot more chokes available, whereas with gi, you have a lot fewer chokes. You also have more protection for your body, I guess you can kind of call it, because you're just covered all over. However, from that protection, the cost is that it's also very hot at times, which is why when we started training way back when, we wore judo gis, which tended to be heavy. You know, you have single and double weave. The double weaves are like maybe 1,000 gram type gi, whereas a typical gi like this one, this is a shoyu roll, I think they run at about 400 or 420 is the weight of the gis, whereas my luckies are usually 550, but they're bamboo or they're hemp, so they're cooler. Cotton ones, the heavier you go, the hotter it is. It feels like you're training in a sauna. That would be a reason, I guess, for no gi, right? You know, it's cooler and it's more realistic as far as clothing goes. That's regarding wearing the actual uniform. As both Professor Dave and Grandmaster Hickson mentioned, there are just more things to do with using the gi. You know, so more opportunities to do something. You know, just because you can use the material to your advantage. Now, one of the things that a lot of no gi proponents will talk about is, well, like I mentioned earlier, it is more realistic as far as clothing wise, but it's also more realistic as far as a street fight goes. And that's yes or that's no, meaning that it could go either way. Here's the way we look at it. With the gi on, you have to look at what's easier and what's more difficult. It's much more easier to do your offense. Conversely, that would mean your defense is more difficult. Why is it more difficult? Because your opponent has stuff to grab on you. right? Think about it this way. Let's say you go into a training facility, maybe it's an open mat, and you have your gi and everybody else is training no gi. What are you gonna typically do? Are you gonna leave your gi on or are you gonna take it off? Chances are you'll take it off and you'll end up doing no gi because everybody will have the advantage of being able to grab you. They'll be able to choke you with your collar, whereas you won't be able to choke them, right? It's a common thing that people will do. But I don't know if you remember back in UFC 1, 2, and 3, or 1, 2, and 4, I can't remember which ones Master Hoist fought in. He wore a gi every single time. And his reason for wearing a gi was because he was using it for two reasons. One, if they grab onto him, then he knows that they can't punch him because they're busy grabbing him, which was good for him. And the other was that the gi enabled him to sop up all the sweat and to make things less slippery for the opponent. Whereas if he were not wearing one, you'd have two slippery guys just kind of moving back and forth, which is what the no-gi game is about. So if you look at it in these terms, here's what you have. So if offense is easier if you're wearing a gi, that would mean for no-gi, offense would be more difficult. Not because it's difficult to get something on somebody when you're wearing no gi, but there are just fewer opportunities. And also it's a little slippery too. Conversely, if defense is more difficult wearing a gi, that would mean that defense wearing no gi would be easier. One of the things that wearing a gi does in making your offense easier is it gives you more opportunities because you can grab. What it also does though, is it makes your offense better because let's say I'm practicing rear naked chokes. If I'm doing rear naked chokes with no gi on, my arm just slips right around their neck. Especially if we've been training for a little while and we're both kind of sweaty, then that arm just slips right around like there's nothing blocking it. However, when I'm wearing a uniform, right, you see all this here, this is all a source of friction. So when I try to slip my arm with the gi on around their neck, it's gonna be a lot harder. So what I have another option is I can just simply grab here from behind and pull. But if I want to practice my rear naked choke, I'm gonna put my whole arm in there and I'll use this. So there'll be some days that I'll be training with the students and I'm just gonna practice rear naked choke, even if I'm wearing this. So what it does is it makes my offense easier and better because I'll be able to do it with no gi, no problem. Right, that makes sense? By making my offense easier here, it makes it more difficult there because I have fewer choices, number one. Number two is that because of the slipperiness in training no gi, I need to work on my positioning. I need to make it so that my opponent has less freedom to move because with no gi, he can move. So I need to use my hips more. I need to use my shoulder more, my weight more. Some people will work more on their grips, you know, especially grabbing the wrist so that your opponent can't move. If that's what helps you, then that's what helps you. But you're going to have to develop that sense when you go no gi. Now with regard to defense, it's much harder to get out of stuff if my opponent can grab me and pull me and can control me by using my clothing. So what I need to do when I'm wearing the gi is I need to work on better ways to put my weight in a certain spot. I need to be tighter to not give as many opportunities to my opponent because he has all this to work with. So that's how I make my defense better with wearing a gi. On the other hand, when I wear no gi, my defense is easier because I can count on explosion, I can count on slipperiness to get out of a bad situation that I should probably have not gotten myself into. So that's where the cheat comes in. So the reason why we do both is because by doing just one or the other, what it does is, if I play with the gi too often, it makes me get kind of lazy in my offense because I always have these opportunities available. If I play no gi all the time, then I'll tend to get lazy with my defense because I know I can always just explode or I can slip out of stuff, whereas I would not be able to do that if all the friction was added wearing a gi. So they both have their benefits. So we're not of the camp that says we only do gi or we only do no gi. We do them both because there are logical reasons for doing both. Now, that's not to say if one school does only one and does only the other, that's fine. Every school is going to run their own way. There are prominent schools that do only gi, and there are prominent schools that do only no gi. We've always just done both because that's just how we were brought up in jiu-jitsu. And Professor Dave is not one to change things if it's something that the Gracies did, in particular Grandmaster Hickson, because we're not better than the art, and we're certainly, still trying to learn what our masters have done. So if it's not broke in our idea, just keep doing it the way they did it. So that's what we do. So that's your reasons. Those are your reasons why we do gi and no gi. If you have anything to add to it, by all means, we're always open to the comments because we're always addressing the comments. Put in your little 2 cents in there and let us know what you think. Once again, thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking it. Also, thank you for sharing as well. We really appreciate it. In the meantime, I've got to get ready to start a class, and have a good day training. Take care. Bye-bye.